Sup y'all, this is Brian, Theoretical Gamer. I have not posted a video in a long time, but I was tagged on this kind of questionnaire thingy, and I'm very lazy when it comes to making videos and stuff and finding stuff to talk about. I've got like a list of video ideas written down here that some of them are good and I would like to talk about them, but being the lazy bastard I am, someone actually has to ask me. You know, it's like, well, okay, I kind of feel obligated now. Some of these questions are not easy for me to answer, partly because they involve favorites, and if you ask me my favorite, it's really hard for me. I mean, I don't like to limit myself to say, this is my favorite. I like certain things, certain aspects of certain things. I like certain aspects of other things. They can shift and go up and down over time. And a lot of these, well, I'll be honest. I call myself the Theoretical Gamer for a reason. It's been a long time since I've done active gaming. So, with the vagaries of memory, it's kind of like difficult for me to answer a lot of these questions of things that happened a long time ago. But, so a lot of these questions are going to be unanswerable. But here goes. First system I played, easy, D&D, red box. Not the fake red box put out a few years ago for 4th edition, but the original red box put out back in the day, decades ago. I played it I remember playing it in the school library with some buddies in St. Mary's Catholic School in Goldsboro, North Carolina. First character, no idea. It was a long time ago and I didn't play him that long. I think he was a magic user. He may have been. I do know that he was basically, like, we basically walked into the first part of the dungeon and I was murdered by another PC, and his reason was, I'm chaotic. That guy was a dick. And he was not just in-game. He was the kind of person, the only reason to play is to ruin everyone else's fun. Right? That was my first... I mean, I knew that gaming could be more than that, and I just knew it. You learn right away. Play with friends. Favorite system? Oh man, I don't have a favorite. Here's the thing. Like I said, I like Numenera, flavor of the month, the whole thing. You know, like it's because it's new and it's fresh and it brings a whole new perspective on gaming that I never, in some ways that I've never seen before. It kind of reverses a lot of assumptions. I like that. But, you know, that's just the newness of it. It's got that new game smell. Plus, again, I've never actually gotten the opportunity to really play it. So, favorite, but I like systems that give you a lot of freedom to do what you want. The more crunchy ones, the game tends to be about the system, more about the system itself than the game you're playing. You know, it's like you're thinking, well, you're playing, but at the same time you're thinking, do I have this ability? Will I be able to? What will I need to roll? Which is why one of the best games I've ever run back in the day was Amber Diceless, which once you get past character generation is effectively systemless. It's all storytelling. I'm going to do a video on that, I think. There's a new iteration of Amber Diceless called Lords of Gossamer and Shadow, which I'm planning to do a review on. Favorite character you've played? Oh man, that's another thing. I don't even know. There's this, I'll just tell you the one that comes to mind that I liked. For a while, I was in a regular Wednesday night game that was online. But it was before, you know, the whole Google Plus thing became popular. Everyone had slower systems. The technology wasn't up, so it was really just a text-based game. It was just sitting there, just the game was just right, you know, and then you would like get up and go to the bathroom while you're waiting for people to respond, and you know, it was technically real time, but it was still a lot of fun, and it lasted for a few years. We bounced between different games, and I likened it to the difference between like watching a movie and reading a book. If you're watching a movie, it's very in your face. It's very exciting. It's very, that's the. But if you read a book, it's more wordy. You can plot out what to say. It's two different animals in a way, and it was good. And anyway, the thing is, the one game that we kept coming back to is Talislanta, which I've done a review on, and you can check on my channel for my Talislanta review. I highly recommend it. It's a very weird and bizarre fantasy world that it's meant to be completely unusual and original and surreal, and it doesn't have any of the standard fantasy races. Like, their big tagline was "No elves," which was kind of a tongue-in-cheek, waggish joke, but because there was no dwarves or orcs or any of the standard races. And I played a character called Murdoch, who was a Moroccan. The Moroccans were not the most powerful race, far from it. They weren't magical. They weren't much of anything really. But apparently, for whatever reason, their entire nation had been cursed. Right? Basically everything bad that could happen happened to Murdoch, to Marok first and worst. And so as a result, their most profitable profession in Marok was a dung merchant. They would gather up the dung from these giant creatures called ogrons, which was extremely stinky and smelly, but would actually, be good fertilizer, and they'd sell it. And that was the top profession in Marok. And they were extremely fatalistic. And there was this kind of, and they didn't even have this kind of like emo attractiveness. They were just pale and washed out and just gloomy. And it was a nation of like Eeyore, Marvin the Paranoid Android type people. And I played that to the hilt. Like, oh well, very. And it was fun. I liked him, and he was a mercenary. There was, he was a Moroccan mercenary. He was basically the guy that would join all these mercenary troops, and because he was the Moroccan, he would be given all the crap work and all that stuff. But eventually, he stopped being the standard mercenary and joined an adventuring party, and things started to turn up for him. Of course, he rarely saw this. He was just like, everything was, oh, hi. Have a nice day, I guess. But we were in a good group, and the dynamic worked, and he would contribute. He wasn't like the kind who would just sit and do nothing while everyone else did stuff. I contributed, but I just played him as this kind of like very somber stick in the mud, and he got into stories. There was this, he met a girl, fell in love with her, and they were just about to like really get going, and then all of a sudden she basically saved his life by hurling herself in front of an oncoming attack and sacrificing herself for him, which is, he was heartbroken, but being Moroccan, not really surprised. So that's just the guy that comes to mind. Least favorite character I've played. And I'm not one of those people who who thinks like that. I don't really think in terms of least favorite. There's any number of forgettable things that I've done and moved on from. It's because like I said, I either like something or I just ignore it and forget about it. Like, some people will go on and on about the type of music they hate. I have music I like. I have a lot of songs that I like, and songs that I'm simply not interested in. I don't really hate any song, except for Human by the Human League. While we were apart, I was human too. Oh dear God, fuck. No, it's favorite world. Again, it depends on when you ask me. I would say old one is like the aforementioned Talislanta. Very surreal, very bizarre, lots of variety, very original. Um, New School Numenera, the Ninth World in Numenera, for much the same reasons. They both of them are just stuff you don't see. None of the standard tropes. Favorite die, specific die or type? Seriously, that's a question. It's their dice. I mean, some people have their lucky die. I've never been able to develop that kind of superstition, you know. Miniatures or theater of the mind. So playing without miniatures wasn't pretentious enough. You had to call it theater of the mind. The first I've heard that term was, I think it was in one of those D&D videos. Chris Perkins used it to describe the miniatureless version, and for 5th edition. And I was like, okay, that sounds okay, but it's like, but having said that, I'm definitely a theater of the mind type person. Like I said, I played Amber, which has no real system, and it's another thing that I would like to do a video about, is what I call the swoosh factor. What is the swoosh factor? The swoosh factor is when you are playing a game, and you're bopping along, you're role playing, you're in character, you're in touch with your character, everything happens, and then all of a sudden you meet some brigands, or you're about to start a duel with your hated enemy, and the game master says those magic words. Roll for initiative. Roll for initiative. And then swoosh. It's like you're playing Final Fantasy and you're walking through the wilderness exploring, and all of a sudden you're in battle mode. You're you swish with the thing, and then numbers appear over his head, and then he goes swish, and then numbers appear over your head to show how many hit points you've lost. And you swish back and forth until one of you dies. It's some games or some play styles are very good at bypassing this, and it's fantastic because you're almost playing a different game, and role playing stops. And it's not like trying to. And a lot of times, there's no, unless you have a very specific, like, morale check thing and you decide to use it, it's like everyone fights to the death because that's what happens in doodly 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 doodly, It's, you're not, and it's hard to, and then once it's over, you're just like, okay, well, that's done, and you put it away. And to me, miniatures, it's almost, you can't help but invite a swoosh factor. You've stopped, thinking, seeing through your character's eyes, and you're looking at your die on the board. And again, I've never really used miniatures much. I just can't imagine it being any other way. Maybe I'm wrong. It's one of those things that you can't know until you've done it, but it just seems to me very, well, swooshy. Worst critical glitch or failure in game? Man, literally no idea. It's one of those things that it's like I said, I'll remember storylines and I'll remember characters and I'll remember stuff that we've done, but I don't tend to remember roles. Best favorite critical success in game, same thing. Favorite class type of character to play? I have never gotten the chance to do this, but I hear stories about some people who will, like back in the day, play D&D and are in campaigns that are still running, and they're still playing the same characters that they had for decades. And they're like 300th level, and they've like bypassed godhood and become uber gods, and they have gods as their servants and stuff. That's an exaggeration, but the idea of playing this long-running game, the zero to hero thing, is I never got to do that. Games always fizzled out, or were non-starters. They were sometimes, or we would bounce between games and, that sort of thing. But I had always wanted, in an old school type D&D game, to play a magic user and start with, like, the first level one frickin' spell per frickin' day, and then move up to, like calling the thunder down, and then, like 5 times before breakfast. That kind of like God, like, and actually, I like processes. I like seeing things develop. And I would love to do that. Least favorite class? Again, I don't tend to think in terms of least favorites. Most newer versions of the fighter get quite a bit of interest because you've got like the different feats and you've got like different. But old school fighters were not interesting. They, they they weren't. They were just dull. The original. Like you could play characters who were interesting, but the class itself was not. One system or setting you've never played but want to. Oh, let's see. The aforementioned Numenera. What else do I have? That Lords of Gotham and Shadow. I picked up the Player's Handbook for 5th edition D&D. If someone asked me to play that, invited me, I'd probably say yes. There's a bunch of stuff over there that I would love to. The new Vampire the Requiem, the 2nd edition, the Blood and Smoke one. They called it Blood and Smoke. They acted like it was a supplement, even when it was Vampire the Requiem 2nd edition, and they are reprinting it as Vampire the Requiem 2nd edition. I don't know why they did the Blood and Smoke thing at all, but I'd love to do that. I'd love to play or run that. If I were going to create myself as a character, what would your class be? I don't know. Just I'm a classy guy. No, I don't know. It's the assumption of class kind of implies to me it has the feel of D&D style classes. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. It's like once you have a class, you have to kind of go out and do stuff. And leaving my house and doing stuff isn't my forte or forte. On this how do you pronounce it? But I would like to be, like I said, it would be cool if I was a magic user and could cast spells, but then you know what the problem is? This it's like I think that if magic users existed in the real world, they'd end up being like the ones in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, like the senior wizards. Like they've worked really, really hard to become like demigod, like powerful wizards. But now they're old and lazy, and they just want to have regular meals and know what's going to happen during the day. So they hardly ever use any magic. So it's like that. But I don't know. Like I said, it's one of those weird questions that I honestly can't say. Who am I going to tag? You know what? I think that a lot of the people that I would want to tag have been tagged. If I think of any, I'll put them in the comment. I'll put them down below. So, well, that's it for now. I'm going to sign off and hopefully this will trigger me to like do future videos. Talk to you later.